A tactical masterpiece from Cooper and the boys on Saturday to earn Forest a point against Manchester City. But what exactly did they do to get this? We've got the full in-depth analysis for you now. Welcome to Forest Fan TV. Good morning, good evening, or good night, wherever in the world you are, whatever time of day you're watching this. Hope you're having a fantastic day, and welcome to your in-depth match analysis for Nottingham Forest 1, Manchester City 1. In today's video, we've got your favorites. We've got the heat maps, we've got the average playing positions, but more importantly, we're going to be talking about why Man City found it so hard to beat Nottingham Forest. Some people are putting it down to luck or bad finishing from Haaland. Likes me are thinking that the plan actually fired well and worked really effectively. And we're going to get into all of that now. Before we do, if you wouldn't mind taking a second to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new, as we are this close to 10,000, the big 10K subscribers. Thank you all so much for your love and support. But let's get into it, and let's start with the average player positioning because they're really, really interesting. All right, guys, so there's a few things I want to start and point out. And firstly, for all you like me who have OCD, I apologize for the numbers being upside down on the left-hand picture. You'll understand why in a second. The left-hand picture is the average position of the players against Fulham, and the right-hand side is the average position of the players against Man City. Now, obviously, we played Fulham away, so I've just flipped it round because it makes it actually easier for you to visually see exactly the differences that we saw between the two games. And for me, the first thing that screams out on positioning is what we called out last week. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted to put these side by side is Joe Worrell. Look at Joe Worrell here against Fulham. So this one here is against Fulham, and this one here is against Manchester City, just for you guys who are not sure. You can see here Worrell, as I pointed out last week, and we'll show you even more when we get to the heat maps, his position was very far to the right. The gap between him and Felipe was absolutely huge as well in between the two defenders. And he was being dragged out further and further because he always looks to cover this right-hand side. A couple of you in the comments mentioned that it's maybe because he's used to playing in a back three, and that was the position he was taking up a lot last season. I think there's a lot of credence in that argument, and I think there is a case to be made. But forget all that. I want to show you the difference between where he played against Fulham and where he played against Man City. You can see here, if you line it up with the edge of the box, take a rough line there, he's playing almost outside of the box on his average position. If we do this here against Man City, I've curved it a little, but you get the picture. He's playing well inside the lines of the box. And it's such a better position, and it makes such a huge difference to the compactness of that central gully. It doesn't leave, the Grand Canyon in between him and Felipe. It makes a huge difference when it comes to being more compact and more organized through the middle. The gap between him and Felipe, you can just see it visually here, but I'll draw a couple of lines, is night and day compared to their average position against Fulham. It's a huge, huge difference. And for me, it's one of the reasons why we had the success we did against Man City. Had we done that against Fulham, maybe it could have been a different story as well. And we'll get into what happens, against West Ham throughout this week. But the other thing I want to show you is the shape. If we have a look at here, and again, we'll just draw two lines from the box all the way down to the halfway line. If you look at it there, you've got 1, 2, say 3 players there with Freuler who are playing within the confines of the box and our half. And it was very, very spread out in Fulham. Fulham were able to disrupt our shape quite a lot. Now contrast that with the weekends against Man City. And if I again draw very wavy lines, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, call it 5, 6 players playing down that channel, absolutely choking the middle of the pitch out. And what it does, it forces your opponents to have to go around you and outside you, which is exactly how I suggested Forest could get something out of this game at the weekend. Choke out the middle. Why? Because the goal is right here. It's not over here near the corner flag or here near the other corner flag. To score a goal, eventually the ball has to come into the middle of the park. And that's the only way you're going to score a goal, unless you're going to bend one from like 35 yards out, crazy style. So you can see already that was the game plan. It was clear to see, and it was the right tactic for Cooper to use to choke out that middle. And it's something that, Sean Dyche is famous for doing. He did it very well against Arsenal when Everton went and won it. And I almost feel that maybe Cooper saw some of that, saw how they forced Arsenal out wide, gave up that possession, and he used it and adapted it into Forest. Or maybe he figured out, by himself and his team. Either way, it doesn't matter. It was the right tactic to do. You have to give up possession against some of these elite teams. But the question is, can you dictate where you give up that possession? And if you block out that middle and you stay disciplined, then 100% you're going to force them out wide. What we saw a lot in the weekend was Man City trying to, change the channels of the ball. They were going from right to left very fluidly, may I add. They had loads of overlappers coming down the wings as well. It was very hard. It requires a lot of concentration. It's all well and good to do it on paper, but to execute the plan as well, there has to be a lot of credit given to the boys for doing that. So that was the first thing you notice when you look at the average player position. And for me, it was it did really put a smile on my face to see that tactically they've thought about it very well. You can see as well that Worrell's playing a little bit deeper compared to where he was against Fulham. Felipe is just literally a unit. His average position is exactly the same height-wise as it was against Fulham. And this is the kind of elite level position you would expect a defender to play against for a team where you are not exactly going to be the most attacking team. They still have that confidence to hold that position. And just look how consistent he is with the lines in terms of what he's holding. He himself played a little narrower on average on Saturday. But again, that's to be expected because the plan was just to squeeze them in and block out the space in the middle. So really, really pleased with that. Let's have a quick look at the second half and when Forest had to start to put, the foot to the pedal, what happened. So I've brought up here the second half. This is when all the subs have been made and we can have a look at the average positions here. And again, it's quite interesting. You can see in comparison to the first half, what Forest did was add an extra body upfield in Chris Wood. And you can see here, he's taken a very close position in and around, I was about to call him Stern John, around Brennan Johnson. So again, the tactic was still to attack down the right-hand side. And again, it's something we mentioned in the pre-match preview to it, that if Forest were going to get any success, it was going to be down the Man City left-hand side. Because of the whole thing that happened with Cancelo, Bernardo Silva is playing as a utility left-back. I don't even know if that's the right phrase, where although he's playing in midfield, defensively, he would come in and fill that hole. And what you found was that and I was surprised that Pep didn't address this, because this was going to be the only side of the pitch that Forest would attack. We have traditionally, for a couple of years, been very heavy down the right-hand side in terms of our lopsidedness in attack. And it wasn't going to change at the weekend. So it did surprise me. Maybe a little bit of arrogance from Pep thinking Forest won't create too much. But the chances we were creating were always going to come down that right-hand side and targeting that Bernardo Silva weakness. Although I've got to say Bernardo Silva was probably man of the match in the overall picture of the game. But in terms of where the weakness was, it was his defensive duties that was going to be the one we could expose. And that's exactly what we did. So again, Cooper got it spot on. What he did, instead of playing Chris Wood down the middle or on the left where he's been exposed and, obsolete, he targeted him to play down our right-hand side. And that gave us that extra number in attack. Morgan Gibbs-White, very consistent in where he was. But then what you also saw was that we had to release a right back. Now, Serge obviously went off injured. And you can see here we ended up playing in a semi-3 at the back with Tuffalo, Felipe, and Worrell. And what that did was release as well Nico Williams to play higher up the pitch. Because you can see here, compared to where Serge Aurier was playing, where Nico Williams were playing, Nico Williams is playing in a more Serge-style position that we've been used to seeing him over the last few weeks, where he does get up the pitch a bit more. But Nico Williams was brought on more as a midfielder, more as a finisher, as Cooper likes to call it. And that created us that momentum just to get forward. And you felt it was turning. The moment Haaland missed those 2 sitters, that was where the momentum shifted. And then suddenly you saw Forest thinking, right, now's the time to see if we can get something out of it. The goal itself was a thing of beauty. We'll cover it off shortly as well. But so much better from Joe Worrell. Now, I don't think Joe Worrell was amazing on the day. I still don't think he is our first choice centre-back. But the change in him being more central rather than going out wide on the right is night and day. And I'll just bring that picture up again for you guys just so you can see the difference. And you can just visually see the gap between the 2 centre-backs. It's so much nicer and so much more compact. Hope all that makes sense. What do you guys think about that? Let me know in the comments down below. And let's move on to some heat maps. Okay, so moving into the heat maps, and I'm sure some of you saw this on Match of the Day as they were trying to use it to take the piss out of Forest. For me, it should have been used as praise for what Forest did. The heat map is very, very centrally focused. You can see there's literally nothing happening down this left-hand side. Lodi was playing very disciplined in the left back. I thought he was brilliant in the game. And where we did attack, we attacked down the right-hand side. And yes, the darkest point of the heat map is in the goal. But again, what Match of the Day failed to tell you, out of the 411 touches we had, nearly 60 of them were from Navas. So obviously the darkest part of the heat map is going to be where the goalie is. In fact, I think he probably had the most touches out of anyone on the Forest team. I may be wrong. I haven't looked at it player by player. But nonetheless, he's had a major amount of the touches of the ball there. So that's why it's dark. So Match of the Day really need to do their research before because if you're going to take the piss, at least take the piss with some facts behind you. But the point here is how dark and focused the area that Forest were playing was here. You can see that they really, really blocked out the middle of the pitch here. And when you look at Man City's possession, now it looks like an invasion, I grant you that. But they were trying to target down the right-hand side. You can see their darkest area was here, where they tried to target the Lodi side. For me, that was a mistake. They would have had more success if they had gone down the left-hand side more, which is our weaker side of the 2 in defense. But I ain't complaining. But what you can see is they have a light patch here in the middle of our goal area, which shows you again there was bodies there ready to block and ready to defend. You can see like these weren't play by play, but you can see the generic picture shows that they were coming in, sieging from mainly the right hand side and coming in on the left hand side. If we get time, we'll have a quick look at the Man City average player position. But again, I just want to point out Worrell. I want to point out the difference in his touches. Now, if you remember last week, most of his touches were here, right at the bottom, as if he was playing at a right back. Now, a lot of his touches were still quite far to the right-hand side, but they're clear to see a lot more inside than they were against Fulham, and the majority of this season, to be honest. But his average position was here. So, a few touches were here, but the average one was here, and it's a lot better. Now, if we bring up Felipe and then we'll overlap the 2, you can see Felipe had 45 touches all in and around this left-hand side and a few key ones in and around the box. But put them side by side, and there's not a huge difference to the darkest areas of the map. You can see they spent a bit of time in the box, but here they're in between the goal lines in the majority of the case. You still would like Worrell tucked in just a tad more, but it's a lot better than we saw against Fulham. The next one I want to show you is Brennan Johnson and the actual idea behind what he was doing. It was very brave of Cooper, again, not to get Jono to track back too much. You can see the majority of his time was spent in the opposition half. We saw that on the average player positioning that I showed you in the previous picture. And where he had his important touches was down here on the right-hand side, as per normal. And again, this is the hole that's left by Bernardo Silva. In fact, I haven't looked at it, but it'd be interesting to see how much time Silva spent at left back. And you can see it's behind my head here. But the majority of Silva's time was spent in the middle, which created that vacuum in the left-hand side that allowed Brennan Johnson to expose it, especially when it came to the goal, which we'll go through in a second. But overall, it was a well-executed plan. The heat maps back it up in despite of what Match of the Day want you to think or how they want to take the piss out of it. And especially Joe Worrell, who moves centrally. Now, yes, I am praising him positionally. He still made his mistakes in the game. For me, still, Felipe and Niakate would be my first choice too, once Niakate is back and fully fit. But if Joe Worrell can learn from Felipe, and Felipe can control his positioning him and kind of drag him back into the right positions, then he's only going to benefit from it. But overall, defensively, a solid performance. Yes, we gave up chances, but this is Man City. You are going to give up chances to them. But it's where you give up those chances. You have to ride your luck at times. You really do. But if there's a game plan and it's executed, then you kind of tie your camel to the rope, as they say in the Middle East, and then trust in God for the rest. And that's kind of what you had to do here. Basically, make your plan, and then that trust God will make sure that Haaland misses from 6 yards out. So overall, very impressed. Now, is this the way Forest should play going forward? Absolutely not. Against the big teams, your Arsenals, your Man Cities, fine. But when it comes to the likes of West Ham next week and more kind of importantly, Everton at home, I want to see Forest playing expansive football and starting to believe in the fact that they're a team, that they've got Cooper, who's now showing tactical awareness and plans and things like that I don't believe he was showing in the first half of the season. Looking at it now in the second half of the season, analytically, it looks like he's getting a lot better in the way he's looking at match. And obviously not just him, but his staff as well. But let's have a look at the 2 goals in the match and talk you guys through those now. Okay, so let's go on and have a look at the 2 goals. First, the City one, obviously it went in first, and then the Forest one, which was just a thing of sheer beauty. What I will say is take this for what it is. Every goal, in my opinion, is preventable. That doesn't necessarily mean they should be prevented. It's just a case of I believe goals come from mistakes or mistakes that have been forced upon a team because the opposition has played so well. Look, what I'll say about this was probably City's hardest chance of the game, and sod's law, it's the one they put in. But nonetheless, let's see what we could have done to potentially improve for this situation, because in my opinion, there were a couple of things. If we start here, this is the ball. It's coming from a corner. Now, just have a look at Worrell. We'll touch on this in a little bit there, but he's holding his face. I think he's got an arm or a foot in there. I've broken it down and I've tried to find the exact footage. I know Cooper had a lot to say about it after, but we'll come on to that in a second. Now, as you can see, the ball's come out to the far post. Grealish here is going to be the one who picks it up, and Colback is going to go and press him. What I love is what Felipe does. Felipe, that experience, that sound understanding of what he should do, now actually takes a position here if we move it forward, which is holding. Why is he taking that position? Because if Grealish decides to outdo Colback down the wing, then Felipe can step across and block it as well. If there's a bit, and what it should allow to do, and what Colback could have realized, is that Felipe was there protecting him, which means he could have pressed in on Grealish and potentially tried to force a mistake out of Grealish. So straight away, I really like Felipe's position. What I don't like, and what you'll see in a second, is the position we've got around Haaland. Now, I understand that Haaland is Haaland, but let's face it, he wasn't great on Saturday. If you have a look at it here, just on the edge of the picture, there's 1, 2, 3, nearly 4 players surrounding him. And what that's doing, it's allowing the space in and around this area here on the edge of the box for the likes of Gundogan to be completely free. And you can see here that Jono is starting to float towards the play rather than see what Bernardo Silva is doing. And what Bernardo Silva is going to sneakily do, because he's such a great player, is try and find his way back to the edge of the box here into space, and obviously he ends up scoring. So if we run this forward, I still think Colback, though, before I do, is too far away. I think he should press onto Grealish there because of the protection that Felipe is offering. The other thing that worries me a little bit is there's still this ball watching from a lot of the players going on currently. You can see all the eye directions are facing this way from pretty much everyone. And the only ones who are touch tight on a player who can afford to do that are the likes of Lodi, who is like holding on to Haaland. The rest of them are kind of just ball watching a little. But again, it is what it is. Let's move it forward and let's have a quick look. So you can see here, Grealish has had a chance to look up, and you can start to see that Jono is going to make his way in towards this space, still completely unaware of the freedom that Bernardo Silva has got. Right now, there's no channel for this ball to come through. It's very narrow, and the safest play really here would have been Grealish to lay it off to Gundogan. However, he's still not under pressure from Colback. So he doesn't need to. And what he does, and he does well, is he sits there and he buys time. And you can see Jono is slowly but surely starting to feed in and get a little wider. And now we're starting to see that tunnel, that channel, if you like, being created in that space there. Now, again, there's still this party going on here of 3 players, now not really marking anyone. And I would have liked to seen a bit better movement from them. Freuler is in a good position. He's blocking off Rodri there. And if we move this forward, now there's the gap. Because Jono's committed forward. I'm not really blaming Jono for this. He's an attacker. But I'm just showing you how the space developed throughout the play. Now, Grealish has looked up, and that for him is basically, jackpot time. He can see that tunnel. It's easy. No one here, because they're all, if you look at it, all there, apart from Worrell, who's obviously nursing that injury, these 3 as well now are all still ball watching. All of them. All their vision is in that direction. Obviously, Jack is right to be watching there, but the rest of them are all just looking into that direction. And that is becoming a bit of a problem. Now the ball comes across. There's the tunnel. Nice and easy. Jono has to put a leg out. Can't quite get across to it, and the ball's going to nicely come there. Still, the vision and the eyes of all the players are still on Grealish, just looking across at the ball. Worrell's kind of a bit fogged over from that head impact, so he's not really able to fully focus, so we'll let him off a little there. And now as the ball comes across, this is when the reaction happens. It's a little too late in my estimation. Freuler's the first to react to try and close the space. At this stage, you would think that he could get there, but Bernardo's quite clever, lets it roll slightly across him and is going to hit it first time. I don't know why. I don't know. He's definitely fogged up because he's lining up as if he's in a wall here. I know Ez pointed it out yesterday where he's covering his Chris Wood there, but I don't know why he's doing that position. And then Lodi should be thinking about charging forward to close down the space as well there. Let's run that forward one more. Here's where the shot happens. You can see because he's taken it so early, Freuler's not able to get across. And the shot itself is pretty much going to go straight through that line there, basically pretty much at Worrell. So when we run it forward, this is the bit that annoys me the most. It really does. Lodi's turned his back on the ball and bent over. That's like 2 for me. Cardinal sins when it comes to blocking. Don't turn your back and don't bend over. Make yourself as big as possible and take one in the nads if you need to. And Worrell's done the same. In fact, Worrell's done it so much so that he's pulled his head out the way. And I'll show you in another angle in a second. Again, I can't be harsh on him because he has just taken one into the head. He actually went down onto his knees because of the impact. So it's a natural reflex to protect your head on it. Should he have stood on it? I don't know. You guys decide. But I think he did take a knock in the head. Anyway, as we move it forward, what I want to show you here is Navas. Navas is clearly flat-footed. I don't know if you can see it in the frame before. There you go. His body weight is central there. But on the next thing, he's taken a slight step to his left, and that's flat-footed him. The ball has come central. It's literally going to go into the net just about there. A bit more roofed than that. So what happens here is when Navas goes for it, a lot of people are saying he's gone with his wrong hand. I don't know. You guys decide. I think there's been this age-old debate on goalkeepers. Should they go across arm or should they go with the nearer side arm? I don't know on this one. I feel either way, he could have reached it. I think the mistake wasn't the arm. I think the mistake was the step to the right that flat-footed him onto the shot. The arm, this you see with most keepers now, they go across their body with their arm to get to the ball. You guys decide on this one. I'm not going to make too much of a judgment. The error for me came from the step to the right. I think he should have saved it personally. As we move on, I just want to show you this angle here and what we touched on a second ago about Worrell. Worrell's over here, and I think he gets an arm. I don't know. I didn't see a foot in it. I haven't seen too many angles, but he gets an arm. But you can clearly see he was in distress because if you look at him a couple of frames later, he's over here down on his knees holding his face. And this is the angle that when the shot is taken, if you can see here Worrell, he's almost pulling himself out the way. Now the camera angle doesn't do him much justice, but it does feel like he's protecting his face And I don't really blame him. Look, at the end of the day, football is just a game. Yeah, as passionate as we get, as irate as we get, and whatever, you don't want to see someone get seriously injured over the sake of a goal. So I am going to be quite soft on him, as some of you, that might surprise you, but a head injury is really dangerous. It really is. So I think his natural instinct was to pull his head out the way. I don't think had he not been hit in the head, that he would have done that. Because he's not one, for all his faults that I found throughout the season, he's not really one who won't put his body on the line. He'll know better than any of us on that. I think it was a natural reflex movement to pull himself away from that. But anyway, that's how the goal goes in. So there are some mistakes in there. I'm not saying that they're critical and what have you. Bernardo still absolutely leathered that ball, and even Navas would be, as if he didn't take that right step, I think he gets to it. But it's the fact that he's hit it early that's caught a lot of people off. Bellotti should not have turned his back. I feel Colback shouldn't have given the space to Grealish to take his time and size up the situation. And Jono, being an attacker, wasn't positionally aware of Bernardo floating in behind him, and he kind of got magnetized towards Grealish and then left that tunnel. So although it may sound a little harsh, I'm just showing you potential places where the goal could have been prevented so that we can understand how it worked and everything. But let me know your thoughts on that. But let's move on to the more fun stuff, which was the Forest goal. Okay, so on the Forest goal, and this really was a thing of beauty. Had this been on the opponent's foot, a lot of people would have been, applauding it and replaying it time and time again. I have, because obviously it's a Forest goal. But, all 11 players got to touch the ball. I'm sure you've all seen that by now. And it's been, I think it was 20 touches in total from start to finish to getting the goal. It's a goal that really does fill you with pride, because this is what I feel this team can do. And they should take great confidence out of it, because Man City are one of the best pressing teams, not in just England, but in Europe, in terms of how they choke you and don't give you time on the ball. It is clear to see we had knackered them out with those narrow, low block tactics. They were starting to gas a little at this stage of the game, and you just felt the momentum was shifting towards Forest. You just felt, as you saw with the position, would chuck 2 extra bodies on average forward. And it just felt like the momentum was shifting towards Nottingham Forest. And you can see there are spaces, there are gaps that we have created. But more importantly, we've got numbers pushed into the opponent's half, which was very rare in this game. So I want to talk about it. Look, I could go through all 20 touches and show you the superlatives on each one. But a lot of people have been giving Chris Wood the plaudits for putting it in from 1 yard. For me, well done. It was a good finish. He was in the right place at the right time. But he wasn't the mastermind behind the goal. Some people are saying Freuler was commanding it. As you can see, he's lining everyone up in the picture I've got behind me. But for me, it's what Jono and MG Dub in particular did down that right-hand wing that is getting lost behind all the bellends who want to push a Wood agenda. What everyone should be doing is focusing on this partnership between Jono and MGW and how it's developing and how they're getting this little telepathic understanding of each other's play. So let's have a quick look at it and run through, and I'll talk you through what I mean. So the ball comes out here to Nico Williams, and what you're seeing from MGW here is a bit of Scarpenia in him, where before the ball's even coming to him, he's having a look over here to see where his buddy Jono is, getting an understanding of where the defenders are. He can see Bernardo Silva's there. He can see, is that Laporte there, I think, off the top of my head? Is he number 14? I can't remember. In that position. And he's starting to paint a visual image, taking a picture of the situation. So when the ball comes through to him here, now there's the panic. Now it's a bit blurry because he's on the move, but you can see Bernardo Silva is on the move here to close him down. Now, the difference between a good player and a really good player is what MGW does here. Instead of panicking, he had some easy passes here, could have laid it back there, could have looked for Chris Wood here in that position. What he's going to do, he understands that Silva is on the charge. Now, when someone comes at you with that momentum, it's hard to stop. Once they stop, then they have to rechange position. It takes a while. Stop, turn, push off the knees, etc. So what he does, he waits for him to come and commit towards him. And as soon as he's done that, he's laid the pass just outside him here. into Jono. Now, he is completely flat-footed, very similar to how Navas was. Look at his position. He's standing in a wide stance. He's going to try and block the ball. The pass is too good. It's going to get beyond him and get to Jono. But what does Morgan Gibbs-White do? You see here, he's stretched out. The ball's gone. He is now out of the play thanks to that lovely play by Morgan Gibbs-White. But does he stand there and admire it? No. First thing he's going to do is go into the gap. Look what he's created just by forcing Bernardo Silva to come and close him. Is all this space now here. I know it looks thin, but it's a nice channel for Jono to work into. But he's not done. He's going to carry on his run and he's going to reshape the Man City defensive line. So when we run it forward now, he's on this bike. You can see Bernardo is completely out the picture and they're both here 2-on-0 essentially with just Laporte in front of them to potentially block it off. Let's run this forward as well and you can see what happens next. Now, what MGW wanted was that ball round that corner into the gap. He fancied himself against the pace. Jono didn't decide to do that. What's good to see here is that Jono is looking up and having a look at the situation himself. Good to see. That's a weakness he's had throughout the season. He's starting to improve heavily on that. He ignores the MGW run. Does that stop MGW? No. He carries on with the run. And what does he do? He drags Rodri with him. So Rodri ends up forced into covering Morgan Gibbs-White's run there. And now it's created a channel here where Jono has options. Either he can cut in and run, or should I say more like that, in behind Rodri because of what MGW's done. He could, if he wanted, lay it off to Mangala, who's in a fantastic position, and then we got numbers going forward. He chooses, he's fancying it with a bit of, his recent form and everything, and he runs. He goes into that space. Bernardo still can't catch him. And now the exact same thing that happened to Bernardo is going to happen to, who is that? Laporte. So it's happening in reverse here. And what's going to happen is Laporte is going to have to commit to the Jono run. And what's that going to do? That's going to free MGW. And Jono does exactly as well here as what MGW did. As he commits, there's the ball. He's flat-footed Laporte. And now MGW has the freedom of this space to work into. It's so beautifully crafted. So ball comes across to him. From this position, you can see first thing he's doing, looking up to see what he's got. There's that corridor of uncertainty right there. He's got plenty of space to hit there. And of course, he's going to go and deliver that. Bang, across she goes and into Chris Wood from 2 yards out. He's not going to miss that, which is really good to see. But the other thing you want to keep an eye on is this stage right here with the two strikers. So Ayew and Chris Wood. They're 2-on-2. What you don't want really is a situation where your strikers are on top of each other. And what you're going to see is Ayew is going to make a slight run that way and Chris Wood is going to work his way into that space. So the strikers are going to split and force the defense to stretch. Because Chris Wood gets behind Walker here, I think that is, then Walker's blindsided to it. And if we run that through again forward, you can see he's now on the move and he's got behind Walker and blindsided him. And now Walker's having the issue of ball watching and not looking at what's behind him. And that's part of the reason we scored the goal. So in she goes. It was a fantastic goal. Lovely play by the whole team. But yes, Chris Wood in the right position to score the goal. Fantastic. But I'm sorry, anyone who's not bigging up and giving the biggest plaudits to MGW and Jono for that goal hasn't watched the goal and is just trying to push their Chris Wood agenda when pretty much the whole fan base said how shit he'd been for the first 3 games. But that's the assessment of the goal. It's fantastic. Let's enjoy that goal. Let's enjoy the way that Forest just outplayed Man City throughout that passage. There's not many teams that can say they've done that to a Man City, and that's something we can tick off the bucket list. It's a really enjoyable game, although for a neutral I can understand it wasn't that fun to watch, but look at it from a tactical perspective and Cooper developing his tactical knowledge and understanding. I was there when we got trounced 6-0 at the Etihad. It wasn't pretty to watch, man. It was almost like a training game for Manchester City. Yes, I know it's different away and home, but if you look at Cooper in specific here and the tactics he's put in that game against Man City at the Etihad, he basically had put 9 men behind the ball and put Jono and NG Dub up front and kind of said, if something comes to you, good luck to you. Whereas here, there wasn't that scattergun approach in the back. There was a clear plan and the players stuck to it. And the last thing I want to say to credit Cooper on is that when you go 1-0 down against Man City, it is really hard to get back into the game. And that's where panic can set in. He didn't panic, and he made sure the players didn't panic at halftime. And then they executed the plan. And eventually, with the substitutions that came on, we were able to see that wonderful goal come in. And then, to be honest, if anything, I thought if anyone was going to go and nick one, it was going to be us. I hope you've enjoyed that video. I know it's a bit long, but there's plenty to discuss and plenty to share with you guys. This one takes a while to put together, so if you'd be kind enough to leave a like, it would be much appreciated. Subscribe to the channel if you're new to Forest Fan TV. Onwards and upwards to West Ham. We'll see you on the next video, and come on you Reds.